This meeting is being recorded.
Oh, that's new. Okay. So, Lou Funnell, I'm really pleased that you could join us today to talk about the sort of difficult transition sometimes for children from primary school into secondary school. So thanks for joining us. I'm Yoni Ejo. I'm an adoption coach, and Lou, if you'd like to just tell us a little bit about your background and what you do.
Yeah, great. So I'm Lou. I live in Kent. I am currently dog sitting. So if I look like I'm sort of looking away, it's because he's lovely, but a little bit needy. I'm in my day job. I am a youth mentor. I create wellbeing projects for young people in school. I work with both mainstream and in SEN sort of delivery in schools and in youth work. And the big part of this term is working with year 6 classes. So the majority of my timetable this term is going into year 6 classes and talking about kind of the move to year 7. And I've probably done this. I was trying to work it out the other day. I reckon I've been doing this for about 15 years, going into year 6 classes. So what's good about that is, in essence, not much has changed. Obviously, there have been obvious changes, but it does give a baseline for what actually are the things that seem to always come up. But also, it's helped me work out what are the best ways to support a young person as they move up. And obviously, there's different levels of support, because there's some young people who are raring to go and they're ready for it, and they've been waiting to leave primary school. Like, they are so on it. And then you've got ones who are like that but haven't really thought it through, and then ones who actually it's a real worry for, and of course everyone in between that. So I'm that was my daytime job. In my extra hours that are somewhere in my life, I am also a coach. I'm passionate about helping people align with their purpose and come into sort of the fullness of themselves, especially those who put themselves last always, and who are compassionately led. And I've also, in this last sort of season, responding really to something that came out of the schools work that I do, looked to how we can support parents in the year 6 transition as well. Because what I've realised is it's also the parents are going through a year 6 transition, and you are either on the receiving end of seeing the worries, or you've got your own worries. And sometimes that's around what school was like for you. Sometimes that's around what you can read on Facebook, or what you see in the news. And sometimes that's just genuine miscommunications between you, the schools, and everything that happens within this season. So I've been supporting parents with that on a course called Smooth, and I've also got the Smooth magazine, which is a little booklet that you can buy, either as a download or as a hard copy. The hard copies are prettier though, and that is a sort of coaching journal, I suppose, for your year 6. It's to help them think it through. It's only sort of 8 activities, but it's to help them think through the process of transition, but also it can help you guide conversations with them as you do that. So that's a little bit about me, and what we'll do now is we'll talk a little bit about what you're here for, which is transition. So transition, what does it mean? I always think of transition, and this season has been perfect, well, at least in Kent, to explain transition, because we literally have a first day of spring. In the diary, you can open it up and it will say this day is the first day of spring. But I don't know about you, but I feel like spring has only just completed and got there. And so actually, in the same way that we have seasons, we have these transitional stages between the seasons, where different plants grow at different times, where we're not quite sure what's going on. It feels a bit confusing. Do we wear a coat today? Do we not wear a coat? All those kind of things. And any kind of transition is the same. It is moving from one thing to the next. But I think what we can often see it as is either an inconvenience or something we've got to get through quickly. It's just a corridor. We've just got to walk through it. What actually it is a corridor, but it's one we can decorate. It's one that we can put, have memories in. It's one that we can actually create as a room itself. So my nan's hallway was always like, me and my cousin loved being in the hallway of my nan's house because it was a room in itself. And so transition is a room in itself, and I want to help people decorate that room. For a lot of young people, this is not a decision they've made. This is how the school system works. Whether it's something they like or not is different, but it is a corridor they are being told they have to walk through. There is no other way around it. You have to walk through it, and you have to walk through it now. And so within that, what I like to do is help young people regain control, and regain a feeling of excitement and hope, rather than right, I'm being shoved through this place. I don't want to go there. I don't know what's behind that next door. I don't know how I'll cope with it. And I just want to go back to the other room, and everyone's saying I can't go back there. And so when we think about transition, we can start by thinking about what we call the 3 C's. Now, as I was saying, I've been doing this for, as I say, about 15 years. And these 3 C's are kind of the things that we would look at when we go into primary schools. But we also, I would add a 4th one in tonight, and it's something that I've been thinking a lot around. And so the 3 C's we've got are changes, challenges, and choices. What I'm going to add in is community. So what we help young people do is prepare for changes, look at challenges as something that they can overcome, and make good choices. But we recognise that those things are surrounded by a community, and the community that is around them, because it's that community that helps them prepare for change, helps them overcome challenge, and helps them to make good choices. And so it's kind of wrapped in this big C of community. So I was thinking, I'll ask you, Yoni, because you're here. How did you get to school when you went to secondary school? How did you get to school? What was your mode of transport?
I went on a school bus.
A school bus?
Yeah, it was a coach with a coach driver. Yeah, it's a bit hideous, really, because I was in a girls' school. There was a boys' school next door, and the only connection we had was on the bus.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Well, I went from walking a 5-minute walk to my junior school, although it never took 5 minutes, because by year 6 I was allowed to walk on my own, and I mean, I don't know how it took us so long to get to school, but it did. I went from that to having to walk a 40-minute walk to school, or I could get the bus. Now, I was absolutely super petrified of the idea of getting on a bus, because there were way too many decisions. I had to make sure I was at the bus stop, know who I was going to sit next to, know where we were meant to sit on the bus. There was all these things, that worried me, and I wish I'd had someone like me in my life, because I never talked to anyone about that. I just decided, no, I'm going to walk to school, and lots of people from where I lived and the area that I lived in did walk to the school. It was a fairly normal thing to do. So you often would walk with one friend but end up with 10 by the time you got to school. But the transport school is a really obvious way of which we could start with changes. What are the changes that are between the primary school and the secondary school? And also, what's staying the same? What's changing? What's staying the same? Now, a silly one I always do, I did it today. I was in a school and I say, how many of you got to wear a tie now? And they're all like, me. And I'm like, right, keep your hands up if you can do up a tie. And one by one, they're like, oh, no, I can't do up a tie. And so we start to mind map, well, we're going to have to learn how to do a tie up, aren't we? What's a way in which we could learn? And some of them will say, well, my dad wears a tie, or some of them who are looking will often notice that a teacher, or sometimes I take sixth formers in with me and they're wearing ties, and I say, oh, I could ask this person, I could ask this person. Some of them will say YouTube, and I'll talk to them about why we don't watch the Americans do up a tie, because they do it differently, and what kind of tie we'd have to look for. So we start to mind map in a really gamey, fun way. What are some of the things that you can do to control or to have control over that change? And what I'd say is, particularly with a young person with additional needs, it's really important that we're starting those conversations now. Because if change is a big thing for them, and if change has all the feelings attached to it, or possibly even trauma attached to it, we need to start that conversation now so that we can plot it, rather than the week before you start secondary school, which is normally a bank holiday weekend. So you do not want the stress of that then. You're suddenly going, right, all these things are going to change, and we don't know, we're not sure how to do it. Now, obviously, I'm not sure, but I know in Kent, a lot of our young people get 1 to 3 days in this term in their secondary school. And so some of the things get calmed down, and I see a real difference. And this term it's not happening, but quite last year, the difference between me going in once before they'd gone to their secondary school to when I went in after they'd gone to their secondary school, there was a lot more calm in the room, because they'd experienced it. It wasn't the unknown anymore. And so we can start to think about, what are these changes and how can we start to plan towards them? So if they're creative, big mind map. Get a big mind map out, write down all the changes. We often do, I say, put a smiley face next to the ones where you're like, I'm okay with this idea. Like, it's a change, that's a little bit weird, but kind of like it. So some of them really like the idea they're wearing ties. I would have hated it. Some of them really like the fact, a few of the ones today in the school, they're like, I get to wake up later because I'm actually live nearer to my secondary school. So we start to think, what are the ones that are good? What are the ones you feel comfortable with? What are your emotions that come up? And just do it with emojis around it. Another way that we can think about changes, and we do this in the booklet that I was saying about, is just to write down a list. If they're more sort of linear in the way that they think, to write down a bullet pointed list. What are some of the changes? Again, cross off the ones that you're comfortable with. I've got a plan, or I think I'll be okay. And focus on the ones that have more fear attached to it, or more, oh, that feels really unknown. And then start to move forward in it. Now, I quite often do this on a football pitch, which I'll explain later, but start to think, what's the first step I could take it to changing this? How can I step into this that doesn't feel really scary? Just one little step. So, for example, with the tie wearing, it could be, okay, I don't know how to do up a tie. So my first step is going to be working out who in my life wears a tie. That's just a small thing. It's just research. I'm not going to ask them to do it. I'm not going to have a go. I'm just going to find the people who I could go to. And so we start with these kind of change plotting. Now, we do have, I think a lot of people know this, which is the circles of change, what I can control and what I can't control. That is another way that you can work with a young person. What I would say is, if a young person has been in therapy, it's quite often used as a therapeutic tool with a young person. And so I quite often pull away from that with a young person, just because I don't want them to feel like they're in therapy, or that this is something that needs therapeutic action in that sense. And instead kind of look at coaching them as a parent. Now, I wouldn't ever say coach your children as a parent or as a carer. What I would say, though, is there are certain coaching questions and certain coaching skills which can help. And the reason why I say this is, we are great parents. We want the best for our children, and we want them to make good decisions. And so often what we can do is say, here's how you can do it. Here's how you do this. And what we do then is we take that transitional corridor and we put our own colours on it. And what we want to try and do is say, how can I, by guiding them, by working with them, but by helping them think of the ways in which they can move towards that change in a safe way. And what I would say, one big thing, and I've thought about this a lot, I don't know if you've seen on my Instagram, I've been thinking about this a lot, and I've never thought about it before, is everything to do with moving on is loud. So when you finish year 6, there are school fetes, there are school plays, there are transition days where you go in a big group to a new school. There are school discos, if discos still exist, I don't know, or parties. There are school leavers assembly where you have to get up in front of the whole school. It's lots of loud, it's lots of extroverted.
School prom.
Yeah, exactly. I find it hard, prom. I'm like, no, that's an American thing. But prom. It's very big, it's very loud, it's very extrovert. What happens with that child that is overwhelmed by all of that? How do they get to mark or honour their transition? And one of the things I think is really important as a parent or a carer is just to sit and say, we're coming to the end of year 6. What would make it for you? What would mark it for you? Is it that you want to make sure, with permission, that you get a selfie with each of the friends that you've got? Is it that you want to, and I know I'm very cautious of this because it's just gone on the news, but if the school allows, is it that you would like people to sign a t-shirt if the school allows? Is it?
Believe children were sent home for that.
I know, I'm like, this was like a rite of passage in my school that you would do that. You know, what are the things? Do you just want to go out for a meal with your best friend and we can go to Pizza Hut and celebrate the last day of school? What is it that will make it feel like an end for you, that will help you feel, and again, decorating that corridor for yourself? So those are kind of the changes. How can we, let's think about the changes, which I understand for some will be difficult because change has so much attached to it as a word. But what are some of these things and how can we prepare for it? Is there ways we can gamify it? So I was talking to a friend about the whole going to secondary school. She said, do you know what would work for my kid is the whole thing of saying, right, we're going to walk to the school, but I'm going to beat you. And we're going to walk to the school during the summer holidays and we're going to time it. And the first time you and me are going to walk it together and we'll race each other. The second time you're going to go 10 steps ahead of me and you've got to do the direction to the school. I'm not going to help you. And the third time, mum will stand at the start, dad will be at the end or however, and we'll time you doing it. And kind of some kids will really respond to that gamification, which I know her child would be like 100% I'm learning this because I want to prove my parents wrong. Other kids not built in the same way. They might want to look at a map and plot it and work it out. They might want to try it with a friend. So it's thinking about putting these steps in early so it's not a big thing when it comes to the point and it feels normal, feels much less loaded, because that first day might be loaded with a lot of other things, which we will move on to because we are thinking about the second C, which is challenge. Now, again, understand the word challenge can bring up lots of thoughts, lots of experiences, perhaps even trauma. And there's lots of different things that we can see as challenge. So I might set a reading challenge and a load of kids will love that. Or I might say there's an army wall outside and you've all got to climb over it. And there's other kids that would like that. So we have different responses to different kinds of challenges. And what could be really helpful around here is to start working with the child about what are my strengths? What am I good at doing? Actually building their self-esteem. Here are your values. Here are the things you're good at doing. Here are the things you're growing in. You know, do you remember last year you weren't as good as you are now, but you're growing in that. And showing them that actually in everyday life, we are continually overcoming challenges. We just don't realize it because we've just got it into our normal life of moving forwards. And so helping them see about who they are, what challenges they respond to and are excited about. So there might be some things about secondary school, Bunsen burners, for example. I have not met a child yet who, when I say that word, is either not excited, is either really excited or says, I don't know what it is. And when I say what it is then excited. So bit of a random one, but Bunsen burners, it seems to be a thing. So some of these challenges are exciting for them. Some of them, again, are scary. Some of them will bring out that, I can't do it. I can't do it. It's too big. It's too much. Some of the things they will worry about, as I said, on transition day, won't be a worry anymore. And they'll have new things, or they'll think up of new things, or they'll overhear a friend say something and suddenly they're really worried about that thing that might not even exist. So the first thing that we can do with challenge is we can look at what's fake news, what is true and what is not true. Now that can be done through loads of different ways. We can look at the school website. We can have a list of questions or things we want to find out on transition day. Perhaps we can have, some schools will have the teacher, the year 7 head, come to their school. So it's things that we can ask. Again, it's this preparation so that we feel like we've got, not the ammunition, that's not really the right words, but we've got this stuff with us that gives us confidence. What I said at the beginning is not a lot has changed. And we do know this. We know there are 4 areas of life that young people mainly worry about. The first thing is what I would say is academia. They will have questions around homework, detentions, behaviour policies, what is allowed and what isn't allowed, uniform, all these kind of academic-y kind of questions. Which teacher's the worst, and which teacher's the best, of which my year 7 say that doesn't exist, because you can think a teacher is the worst and someone else is like, no, they're amazing, that teacher. And they said very often there's not a collective thought of one teacher. There might be within a class that all hate one teacher, but generally there's not collective thought. So we have these academic questions, and these are questions that can be worked on because a lot of the time they are on the website. They are things that they can ask directly to the school. We have questions around peers, friendships, frenemies, boyfriends, girlfriends. So as I said, I'm from Kent. We still have the Kent test, which means that in year 6 you do a test to see if you can go to a grammar school. And so this splits up friendship groups, quite often at the time where they might need their friends. And also for some young people, it defines them whether they are clever or not. No, it doesn't. It defines whether they're academic or not. And that's a different thing. But anyway, so we have lots of questions around friendships. Will I stay friends with people? What's going on here? We have questions, and these are slightly less in year 6, but you see them rise up as they go into secondary school. Questions about who I am. Who am I? And we know from Erickson that this is one of the tensions that sort of the tween age have, is not knowing who I am, not knowing whether I fit, not knowing whether I like ourselves. And this is a pillar of self-esteem as well, which is why we start to see this little dip starting to happen as young people move into secondary school. Perfectly normal. They're trying to work out who they are. I always say, as homework, they just need to watch Inside Out, talk it through with someone they care about. What's going on in Riley? Why is she feeling this way? Do I ever feel this way? What's going on? We can question our feelings. We can analyse our feelings. But often, because when we are in year 7, well, probably all the way through secondary school, we think now, because our brain is having a bit of a makeover, we need that third person to be this logical part of our brain, this perspective part. And so not that we tell them what they're thinking is wrong, but that we can say, is there another way of thinking about that? Shall we think of some other solutions? You don't have to go after those solutions, but working together, we can come up with some plans. And then, of course, we have home life. And we know for a lot of young people, a lot of what is going on in school is actually nothing to do with school and a lot to do with what's going on at home. So we've had children falling asleep in lessons, children who come to school with no food, children who are aware that there is a financial situation at home, even if it's not actually being talked to them. They're aware of the tension. Children who are dealing with a parent with either undiagnosed or diagnosed mental health issues. There's a lot going on that actually affects a child going to school. And I worked in a school last year, and I remember the head's first day speech. I happened to, I was online listening, and he said, for some of our young people, them turning up to school, that's their achievement for the day. That's enough. And we start with, you've managed to get into school. And that's a school in a very deprived area, where, a lot of those issues exist. I think we can, however, always think they're always in deprived areas, and sometimes those issues can exist in undeprived, non-deprived areas. So we've got these 4 areas: school, friendships, self, and home. And we can start to unpick some of those challenges and think around them. So things with academia, as I said, you can find them easily. Things with peers, we can start talking to them around friendships. And we've got an activity in the booklet about thinking about, who am I connected to? How am I going to stay connected to them? What makes a good friend? What do I want in a friend? Because actually, in year 7, much as I wanted a really nice, reliable friend, I also wanted a friend who was fun. But then it was defining what was fun. What actually is fun, and what is going too far, and what am I going to stand for? And something we say often as youth workers is, actually, unfortunately, they're going to make mistakes, and they're going to make bad decisions. And so who are the people I can go to when I've made a mistake, when I've made a bad decision? Who are the people that I feel comfortable talking to? I always tell a story. And this is the almost great orange juice explosion of '94. And this story is about me and my locker key. Now, I know a lot of kids don't have lockers in schools now, but I had a locker. It was in my year 7 classroom. And about this time, I think it was just before half term, actually, I put a carton of orange juice in my locker. I promptly lost the key. I didn't want to tell anyone I'd lost the key, because I was scared that if I told someone, I would be in trouble. And so I left the orange juice in the locker over half term. Now, '94 was a nice warm summer. So we went back here after half term, and I'd still left it in there. I still didn't tell anyone. And eventually it got to, I think it must have been the last week of term, and we were told we needed to empty our lockers. And so I decided to tell my best friend, because I thought I could at least trust her. And I did it. And I sort of, I kind of told her a little bit of a white lie, because I said, I've lost it today, but today's the day we've got to empty our locker. And I think there's some things in my locker that I will need to get out. And she said, that's fine. My sister, she had an older sister, said, my sister's lost her key all the time. All you've got to do is go and tell the caretaker, and he just cuts off your padlock. And I was like, oh, okay, that's not scary. Now, when he came and he cut off the padlock, he opened the locker, and he looked at me, and we both looked at inside the locker, and we both knew I had lost my key for longer than 1 day because the orange juice bottle had expanded. And I would say it was like a bomb disposal expert. He went in with both fingers in that little archway thing and kind of moved it really slowly towards the bin, and almost sort of, had to put it really, it was a 60-year-old man doing a squat with an orange juice bottle, to make sure that it didn't explode. And the point of that is that I say to them is, actually, I just needed to tell someone. And that's a silly story, but actually it's the same with us, of stuff that goes inside. And so one thing that's so important as an adult is to chat with them at, who are the people around you? Who are the trusted adults? Who are the friends that you can talk to? Is there a trained peer mentors? Are there peer mentors in the school? Slightly older students who you can talk to, who are trusted, who know what to do when something's wrong, because otherwise it all bubbles up inside of us. So we can help them think through those kind of things there. With friendships, it's helping them think, where can we find friends? What kind of things can we say to people? Again, we can go back to that basic of, who are you? What do you enjoy doing? I loved drama. Guess where I found most of my friends? Sat outside the drama studio or in a music room. This is about thinking about themselves and how they can then find friends. And the other thing I'd say is, and this is actually something that a year 8 said to me. She said, it's a bit like Darwinism when you first go into secondary school. It's like everyone thinks it's survival of the fittest. You must find a best friend. And I've been watching Mallory Towers on BBC, and they talk about that one particular friend. Mother would like me to bring home my one particular friend. And I was thinking, what a random thing to say. But we can have this thing of like, we need to find a friend, or we need to find lots of friends. And what a lot of my year 8s say is, actually, I worked out who my friends really were at the beginning of this year. I had friends in year 7, it was fine. But it's time that builds good friendships. And that's okay. And so that, again, it's starting with those questions at the moment of, what do you look for in a friend? What do you want in a friend? Who can you go to when things are worrying you? And that's not just a friend. Obviously, the people that you surround them with need to be trusted adults as well as young people. Another thing that we quite often talk about with challenges is, where are we feeling the tension? So anything anxiety or anger based is obviously adrenaline driven. And I can send this to you if it's helpful. One thing we do is we call it body mapping, but not like the meditation version of it. And I just say to them, when you're feeling anxious, where do you first know in your body? Where is it? When you first feel that tension, where is it? And they'll point to it, and I'll say, now, where does it travel to when it comes out of you? And so we map on it where our emotions travel to. This is where it goes to when I'm happy. This is where it goes to when I'm angry. This is where it goes to when I'm anxious. Now, obviously, sometimes it's not just one place, but it helps us to then think about, okay, how do we emotionally regulate? Because if your anger gets up into your head, and I say, why don't you get a punching bag? That might not help the anger, because it's not coming out of their fists, it's up here somewhere. And so it's helpful to start thinking about, when we're thinking about emotionally regulating, especially for if you've got a young person with ADHD or with autism or on the ASD spectrum, thinking around those things, what can help them to regulate? That might need a conversation with the school. It depends on what kind of school you're going to, and I can't really speak into that because obviously I don't know where people are going. I would say it doesn't always work the way that you might want it for school. And so sometimes you've got to think about more than one way to help them regulate. Because, for example, you know, they can't, if one of their ways is to walk off and go and sit by water, that might not be something that is achievable in a school place. But perhaps them being allowed a photo on their phone of the place they go to, and then being allowed, in this instance, to go to pastoral or to the inclusion unit and to take out their phone and look at it, or have a picture printed out, perhaps, if that's something that's helpful. So again, all these planning things that are really useful to do now, not on the day. Oh, I've lost my place. There we go. And it's helping them to know that, again, as I said at the beginning, change takes time. And some of the challenges, we want it to be okay right now. We want to be able to cope with it right now. Actually, sometimes we need to learn, and we become resilient as we learn to cope with these changes and these challenges. One thing I would say is it's really important, and I know it's really difficult as a parent or a carer, because you're the one on the receiving end of the emotion a lot of the time. But it's really important that in these first stages, if they're struggling with this idea of change and challenge and moving to secondary school, that we allow the emotion. Because if we push it down and we squash it down, and we say it will all be fine, don't worry about it, and I know you know all this sort of thing, but actually when we squash down that emotion, we actually create more tension for them. So it's a bit like one of those wind up toys, you know, we just add to that tension. And so allowing them that emotion, and perhaps summer is a really good time to allow for that, because there is more time for them to think through these things. They've just come out of SAT season. I mean, and they're probably, some of them are going on PGL camps and away days and all that sort of thing. There's lots going on in this term, and for them to sort of compute in their head. So perhaps summer is a time where they can really think emotionally about what's going on and how they feel about it. We can teach them to grow. There is a great story in a book. Oh gosh, Time to Think, that's the book's name, yes. Absolutely blew my mind, because is it Nancy Klein, I
Nancy
think?
Klein, yeah.
Yeah, and she talks about the artists. I don't know if you've read that study. And I love this. So she took a group of people who, like me, if you said, are you good at art, would say, no, I can't do art. Now, I always say I can rip and stick and I can do stuff on the computer, but I can't do art. And a lot of the time that's because I compare myself to friends who can do art. But in this study, what she did was she took some people like me who can't do art and got them to draw a self-portrait. Some of it was a bit Picasso-esque and some of it was like a 4-year-old had done it. They weren't going to make it even into the tape. And they took time with this group. They taught them how to draw, how to shade. They taught them the basic rules. And I think it was over a week. And at the end of the week or the program, they got them to draw their self-portrait again. And in the book, she puts them side to side. And it's amazing to see the difference. And I think what can happen is we get so stuck, and I know there's loads in school about fixed mindset and growth mindset. They'll probably know it better than we do. But we can get so stuck in that this is who I am, that we forget that we got there by growth. And so we can start at that point. How can we grow into this next season? I can't do maths. I remember that argument with my dad. I can't do maths. Refusing to go to school one day because I hadn't done my homework, and he was telling me I could do maths and I was clever, and I was telling me that he did not know his child, that he obviously hadn't got to know me in the last year. I couldn't do maths. I've never been able to do maths. That's a lie. I couldn't do GCSE maths. It's different. It resulted in a massive argument. However, long term, it resulted in me getting a maths tutor and realizing, oh, I can do maths. There's 2 parts of maths I can't get my head around. 2 parts. That's it. Actually, I can do maths. And as I went in and I studied psychology at university, I absolutely loved the maths part of it. I loved statistics. I loved understanding them. I loved telling people that statistics are all made up and don't actually mean anything anyway. But it made sense to me because it had a reason to it. And so we can learn and we can grow. And so obviously, again, we don't turn around to the kid when they go, I can't do it, and go, well, you can, because that's where the argument between me and my dad started. But it's listen. Okay, I want to listen. What are you finding difficult? Where's the feeling? What's happening in you when you think you can't do it? What's happening up here? What are you thinking about yourself when you can't do it? How can we flip the narrative? How can we think about this in a different way? We know that habits take time. We know that things take time and learning takes time. And so we can help them see that actually maybe I'm just on a learning program. Maybe I'm just growing in something. I'm not there yet, but I'm growing towards it. And little by little, they can help. So I said I'd tell you about the football pitch. This is, if you've heard of the GROW model, this is my version for teenagers, because whether they like football or not, they all understand what a football pitch looks like. And so we put a football pitch out and we talk about what's something you want to grow in. What's a goal that you've got? So you could do this as one of the summer things. What's a goal? I want to be able to walk to school on my own. That's what I want to be able to do. And so we put that in the goal, in one of the goals. And if you've got a Subbuteo pitch, you can get it all out on the ground if you want. We say, right, okay, so if that's our goal, where would we place ourselves on the pitch? Now, we have to be on the pitch, but we can be completely the other end. That's absolutely fine. And I talk quite often about the fact that it's amazing when goalkeepers, I don't know if you've ever seen them on YouTube, but if a goalkeeper does a goal kick, so he kicks it from his end in the goal and it gets a goal, it's incredible, but it's very, very rare. So what normally happens is we make passes, and sometimes the passes go up the field and sometimes they go backwards and sometimes they go sort of round in a weird strategic way that only they understand. I mean, I don't understand football at all. And we get to the end goal. That's the plan, is to get to the goal. And so we talk about what are some little steps that can get us to the goal. We don't do it for them. We ask them, what's something you've been thinking of that could help you? And then we do a little trick thing, which teachers do. We say, is there anything else? Because when we say, is there anything else, our brain goes, they're asking, is there anything else? So there might be something else. So I'm just going to get my brain to do another turn. Okay, yeah, no, I can't think of much else. We can then take it out of the box. What if you were this person? What if you were Beyonce? How would Beyonce cope with this? What if you were rich beyond all rounds? How much you do it? What if you couldn't walk? How would you get to school? What if you weren't able to walk to school? Whatever other ways, all these different things, we can take it out of the box, make it creative. And then if we want, we can ask permission and we can say, do you know, I've got a few ideas. We don't have to talk about them, but would you be up for it? Can we have a chat about some of the ideas I've got? And you can then give your idea, but you invite that rather than tell them that that's what you're going to do. Now, what we know is that a football pitch isn't just a game with one team. So what can also be helpful is to say to them, what stands in the way? What are you worried about? What are your grumbles? What are your giants that are in the way? And we can put them on the pitch too. And what I would say is we can help them, instead of helping them with the team that's attacking, we help them with the things that are in the way, the opponents. Because if we can help them remove those opponents, actually they'll get to the goal themselves. And so if they're visual, I'm a visual learner. If they're a visual learner, it's a really helpful way to think about some of the goals that they want to achieve. You could do it with fun things in the summer if they want to make a go-kart or something like that. So we've got these kind of ideas of helping them to grow, but little by little, bite-size movements. And it depends, you know your child best. You know, sometimes you will know that they're taking the mick and little is silly. And sometimes you know, do you know what, that is their capacity? Or, oh, wow, they are making a huge leap here. And maybe we need to say, oh, that's great, but is there anything we could do before we get to that point even? So you make it funny. You know, what else could we do? Make it visual, mind mapping, thinking around these ideas of how we can move forward. The challenge for you will be that habits take time. I can promise you, not that your child will have the best move ever and with all these tips it will be fine. I can promise you this: they will forget their PE kit. They will ring you from school and ask you to bring in their homework. They will be sick one day when they are not sick. They will come home crying in tears about their best friend who they haven't got anymore, and the next day be inviting them around for dinner. They will be on their phone a lot. They will be confused about their phone a lot. There's lots of these things that are challenges for you. And it's about for you thinking about, who do I want to be in this next season for them? Or rather, how do I want to be in this next season for them? Because they will make mistakes. They will be unorganized. They will get things wrong, because behaviour policies in secondary school are completely different to the behaviour policies at primary school. They will sometimes be overwhelmed, come home, slam the door on you and tell you that they hate you. And I know that's really hard to hear, but I did it to my parents. And it's about, who am I going to be, or how am I going to be in that next season? And what I want to really encourage you is, coaching is a great place to have those conversations about how you want to be and how you stay in that place. And I would encourage you to also think about, how do you emotionally regulate? And how are you going to build those things into your time when they do slam the door on you? Remember, if you've got an introvert, when they come home from school, they will not want to talk. And that's okay. To be fair, I was an extrovert and I didn't want to talk. I wanted to talk to my best friend on BT Friends and Family for 59 minutes, hang up and talk to her for another hour. But I did not want to talk to my parents. So the last C that we were talking about is about these choices and about making good choices. And that is, again, around this community that's around them. They will make these bad choices, but we encourage them by reminding them of who they want to be and how they want to be. And one of the ways we can do that, and again, sorry to refer back to the booklet, but one of the activities in the booklet, we think about, what's the future me? And I know that sounds weird, they're only just starting in year 7, but thinking ahead and gaining that vision of who they want to be and how they want to be, we could start moving towards that and helping them make decisions that take them there. In grace, understanding that they will sometimes go backwards on that football pitch, but always giving them the energy to move forward. And I liken this to, I quite often say to the year sixes, if I plant a daffodil bulb, what's going to grow? No, daffodil. Some of them say something like a cucumber because they're funny. But what we plant, quite a lot of the time, the decisions we make are like putting plants in the ground. What we're going to plant, and sometimes we're going to have to weed that ground and go to it and go, right, there's a few things that need to come out right now because they're not doing me good. And some of those things will be good things. You know, I remember making the decision in year 9. I said to my mum, I really don't want to do guides anymore. And actually, the reason was there was a girl who was bullying me in guides, and that wasn't in my school. But also I was recognizing I was getting much more work to bring home, and I needed a night where I could just not do homework and not do anything, not go on to something else. I needed time for me. And so sometimes that weeding is going to be nice plants or repotting plants, removing plants in their lives. And so it's really important, again, that we talk to them about who's on their team, who other than us can help them make those decisions and make those choices. So for some people, that will be a religious community or a sporting community, or like I said, I was in the guides. I actually really had a lot of time for my guide leader. And quite often would talk to her about things. There were some teachers that I felt I could talk to, and it's about giving them this surrounding of people that they can go and they can speak to. I'm a youth worker. I quite often have the young people talk to me about stuff because I'm slightly different to a teacher, and yet they know that I'm in a place where they can trust me to talk to them. It's also really important, I would say, that you have some chats around choices with regard to what I would call safeguarding. Now, I don't mean you're going to give them a whole NSPCC safeguarding chat, but they are coming to a stage where, number one, the likelihood of you not allowing them to have a phone anymore has gone out of the window. So it's one, having a chat about protecting themselves. How are you going to make the decisions over things like WhatsApp, downloads, things that they can play on their phone, but also talking to them about what happens if something comes to my phone that we use the use, so we say uncomfortable, upset, or unsafe, which is from the Diana Awards. If something is making me feel uncomfortable, upset, unsafe, who am I going to talk to? Please do not get them to send any of it to you, to your phone. That's not good. But making sure that they take snapshots of things and keep records of things that can then be reported. But yeah, making sure that you are helping them know. Now, a lot of young people I know don't get any of this happen to them. I'm not trying to scare you into these things, but making sure they know what to do. And the same with friendships and boundaries. My biggest mistake, I suppose, at secondary school was this was where I discovered I was a fixer. And I had people come to me all the time and tell me their problems. And I was good, and this isn't me blowing my own trumpet, I was good at dealing with them. I had a very logical, very creative, very wise head on me until it became problems that I was going through. And I didn't know who I could talk to. And I eventually remember talking to my youth leader and saying, but I can't talk to you about the things that my friends have told you. But actually, now I look back, the things that my friends were telling me, I needed to pass on, I needed to talk to people about. And so again, it's building that community around them, but also talking to them about, it's not your place. You don't need to hold on to things. What are the boundaries of things that you need to pass on and things that you need to keep as a friend, not secrets, but things that you can keep quiet on or are just between you and your friends. So I realise I've talked for a very long time, so I'm really sorry. Just the last bit where we were talking about vision, just some creative ideas to help them create vision for themselves. obvious one would be a vision board, if that's something that they enjoy doing, that kind of crafty side of things. Another one, if they like getting their hands a bit dirty, could be getting a space in the garden, or getting some planters over the summer and planting up plants and writing on each pot, you know, things that I want to grow in my life. Depends how fixated they get on about the plant, because if the plant doesn't grow and they think, well, that's relative to the thing I've written on it, then that might not be good. But some of them, it's just the act of doing it. And again, using the picture tool, so using the goal, who do I want to be and how am I going to get myself there, and giving them some focus on that. I want to give you courage. It is a time of transition. It is a time where there will be changes, challenges and choices for you as well. And you've got it within you. You have it within you to get through this time. You have it within you to support the child that you are working with, or that you are looking after, or that is your child. You have that within you, but it may be that it's also time for you to think about, who are the community that surround me? Who are the community that are going to encourage me? Who are the community that I can go to and say, oh, this child, because there will be days where you need to. So I hope in all of that there is some thread. Yeah, so changes, challenges, choices and community. And if you want to know more, you can get hold of a copy of the booklet that I'm talking about through my Etsy page, and you can join me on Instagram or Facebook.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Can I ask one of the things, the biggest changes from from primary to secondary, is about the transitions within the school. So the moving around, you have to go to different classes, the size. Is there any advice you can give parents helping their children cope with all of that? Because I think that seems to be one of the biggest areas of tension.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things. We do a game with a maze when we talk about this, so they have to all race each other to get through a drawn out maze, and that can be helpful for someone who learns in that sense, to say, actually, what did you have to do to find your way through the maze? Well, actually, sometimes I had to go back on myself and go, and so that's a practical way. So the first thing I would say to most year 7s is this. You are very likely to be moving around as a class in year 7. So a lot of the time you will be in your form for your lessons. And so what I generally say is stick together as a group, because it's much harder to get lost as a group, and there's always someone who knows when you're in a group. So that would be my first sort of really practical one. Now, I know that's not always true in every school, that the year 7s stay together, but that's one I would do. Yeah. The second one is, for a lot of them, as I said, they will have a transition day, or the first week of term will be looked at as a bit of a transitional week or fortnight. Most schools will give you a buddy, so an older student or a TA, who will lead you to the next class, and he will get you to the next class. So again, you've got that idea of you're starting to learn. Another thing I would say is most schools work on a 2-week basis. What that means is after 2 weeks, you've probably visited every classroom you will need to go to. And so after a while, it just becomes, like when you drive somewhere and you go, I don't remember driving here, because your brain learns actually not maps, but your brain learns routes quite quickly. It quite likes the same route, because it's like, oh, I know this route now. I don't have to use so much of my capacity. So actually that's why we do drive places and go, how did I get here? Because we do it so often. And so that becomes the same for a year 7. They can always ask. And what I would normally say is the biggest thing, if you really, really have got yourself lost, is either to find your way outside, not outside of the school grounds, but outside of the school building, and find reception, your student reception, because that's normally signed, and that's for people like me who are visitors rather than you. And they're usually lovely people who will help you get to your class. And the other thing would be that, you can ask another student. Most schools are quite logical. So you have like the A block, the B block, the C block, and then the numbers work in order. So I think with finding their way through classes, there's a lot of help within the school in those first few weeks. The thing I would say, and I only say this because I'm the culprit, is I was really, really slow at tidying up my stuff and putting it away. And quite often I try and do it early, and then I'd be told off, I haven't told you to pack away yet. And it's kind of one of my irks in schools when teachers do that, because I'm like, oh, but that was like a big thing for me. Now, a school I go into quite regularly do a thing called exits. Sorry. So they have exit 1. When the teacher says exit 1, they need to tidy up their stuff and stand behind their chair. And everything needs to be in the bag and the room needs to be spotless. They have exit 2, sorry, just the tidying up, finishing up your work, tidying up. Sorry. Exit 2 is you stand behind your chair and the room is spotless. And exit 3 is you leave the room. And much as there's a regimented thing I don't like about that, I think it's really good for the teacher to make sure that the whole class are ready to leave. And so, again, I can't speak for every school. That's not what every school do. But it might be a conversation with your child if they are a bit slow with packing things up, of just, when you, and again, ADHD, if you're in a little world of your own at that point, it can be hard. But helping them to pack their bag. What do you need in the bag? What's the minimum they need in their bag? So I don't know if those are helpful tips, but I would say a lot of the time in school, and I would really, the other thing is even going on Google Maps, and not that you can walk around a school on Google Maps, but having the top down and being like, oh, what's that one? Oh, that's the sports hall, that's this bit, that's this bit. A lot of schools give maps to their students, and a lot of schools are starting to have like from COVID, some of them have still got the online tours. You sometimes have to search a little bit on their websites because they're on there, but they're not really obvious. So again, or on YouTube, online tours. So okay,
that's really good, really helpful.
Any other questions? I'm obviously happy to answer any questions outside of this as well.
Okay, that's brilliant. Do you want to put your Instagram in the chat, and then I can send it out?
Yes.
This recording will go into my Facebook and also out to people who are on email.
Great. There we go. So my Instagram is I've put it as the actual Instagram thing, but it's @FullyLou, but with a underscore between fully and Lou. So @fully__ Lou, which I've just popped into there for you.
Oh, brilliant! Thank you.
And the Etsy store where you can buy the book is how do they do it? Etsy.com/UK shop, and that's Fully Lou, but without the underscore. Because it's nice and simple. Oh, I don't know if that is right because that's not come up on there as a link.
Okay, I'll have a look.
You can get through my Instagram anyway. You can click on it. So
perfect. I don't think Sarah's got any questions. So I just want to really thank you for that. It's really been helpful, and I'm a social worker, and I've got a couple of my young people who are at exactly this stage, so I'm certainly going to share this video with their carers. So thank you. And it's been really, really useful. So I'm gonna end it there. So thank you. And no doubt I will speak to you again. Thank you so much. I hope you found it useful, Sarah.